Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, and welcome to the Wild3 conference and our panel today, which is Rising Crypto Intelligence, the Convergence of DeFi, AI, and NFTs. I'm Anjali Kapoor, your host and moderator for today. And as a brief background about myself, I am the founder of Web3 marketing consultancy firm, Altkey Theory, based in Hong Kong. And I'm also principal advisor at Web3 at Ecosystem. I got red pilled into crypto not too long ago, just about a year back. And I decided to pivot my media and tech experience 100% into crypto. I had previously worked at the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, Microsoft, BBC, and several other media companies in sales and marketing roles. And I'd now like to welcome the speakers for today, Bette, Chen, and Arif. So let's just go around with a quick round of introductions. And while you do introduce yourself, please add an interesting fact about yourself. I think in crypto, we are way too serious and we take things too seriously. So let's try to make this a little bit of fun for us. So Bette, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Angela. Thanks for having me here. Hello, everyone. This is Bette. I'm calling in from Auckland, New Zealand. I hope that's a fun fact. I don't know how many people actually are from New Zealand joining this meeting. And then adding on top of that, I haven't been out of this little island called New Zealand for the last 2 years. So I'm about to actually be unleashed and then getting out of this island fairly soon to meet a lot of crypto people, hopefully from next month on as we open up the island. I hope everyone is keeping safe during COVID at this time of the year. And a bit about myself. Co-founder, one of the co-founders of Acala, and I've been in crypto full-time for the last probably 4 years also. And then prior to that, I had a background in financial services and also in Web2 tech field as a product manager, and was also previously an engineer myself, but gone down the dark side of product management and an operation. So would really love to introduce to you like Acala as one of the projects that building on Web3, this native multi-chain stablecoin on Polkadot, which is the multi-chain network. I hope to share more of it and why we are doing it and how it's related to everything that's going on today. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bette. Arif?
Thanks, Anjali. Nice to meet you too, Bette, and I've heard wonderful things about Acala. I'm Arif. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alethea. Alethea is a protocol to create intelligent and interactive NFTs. That means the Bored Apes, the CryptoPunks, your Cool Cats, all of those NFTs that are static images today. We believe our thesis is that these would become interactive, intelligent assets that would be able to do jobs for you and tasks for you in the metaverse. And so we began this company almost 3 years ago with that thesis. 3 years ago, nobody really wanted to hear about NFTs. There was one use case, which was the use case provided by Dapper Labs back then, which was CryptoKitties, which was the first NFT I owned. And I've been in the space for almost, I think, 6 years now, having had the chance to see multiple boom and bust cycles. I suppose a fun fact is I've had a failed career as a stand-up comedian in a past life, and I'm happy to now be in crypto, right? So that's a lot safer than failing on stage. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about Alethea and learn from the audience and also from our fellow panelists.
Amazing. Stand-up comedian. Now, who would have guessed that, huh? Because I just said crypto people are way too serious. But thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting. So today in our panel, I'd really like we do it in 3 parts. So the first part would be, I'd like your views on the current crypto trends. And when you speak about them, just reference that back to the direction, how they're shaping the direction of the projects that you're undertaking in your company, in your specific roles. And then the second part of that would be, let's just talk about some crystal ball gazing predictions for 2023 and beyond. What are we excited about? And then there'll be a surprise, I think I've prepared 1 or 2 questions if we have time for rapid fire. And then we'll have any other closing thoughts. So that would be the format of our discussion today. And so if we can jump right into this. So let's talk about some of your priorities, Bette, if you can start. And why are you excited about them? Tell us a little more about projects that you're working on right now.
Yeah, sure. So when we first started, probably 2.5 years ago, building on top of Polkadot, and then we told everyone we believe the future will be multi-chain back then. And then it will be a future of application-specific blockchain, because in order to build real-world application, you do need the full stack approach to solve problems. And then there were a whole bunch of believers in this and supported us, but there's also people who kind of, that sounds cool, we're never going to get there, because if you think back 2.5 years ago, nobody is talking about multi-chain. But look at where we are today. Even though we're still connected with different versions of bridges, but still there's a lot of people going that direction. So that's very cool to see fellow crypto builders actually heading to the vision that we and for Acala, we are building a multi-chain native stablecoin, essentially the bank, if you like, for Web3. And then Polkadot is more like this Web3 internet of blockchain chains actively there. So when we build a stablecoin on top of it, like AUSD, then essentially it can actually transact and be fungible trustlessly cross to all the chains connected across Polkadot. You may think that's a very trivial thing to be like today, but if you look at how messy it is for all the cross-chain world, you have multiple versions of one token across everywhere that it goes, then a native and trustless decentralized stablecoin is still a rare breed. And that's one side of the story. And the other side of the story is true decentralization, right? So we use a model called over-collateralization. So that's probably in a camp that closer to Maker than many other type of stablecoin that's been out there. I think we won't end with one type of stablecoin or one type of bank, because each one of us is kind of filling a certain type of need. And then for us, we are probably one of the lowest infrastructure to build out Web3 world, because now we have the technology to trustlessly cross-chain. Essentially, the internet is there. So Polkadot has already launched with 20 or 30 connected blockchains together trustlessly with shared security. And then a layer on top of that is you need banking system in order for all of those chains to essentially grow and then build an industry out of it. And then the cool thing is each one of those chains are having real life industry solutions, not just finance that we see most, but also say carbon credits, actually metaverse, NFT for sure, a marketplace, but also NGOs, supply chain and things like that. And each one of them actually need this banking system to supply liquidity and also stable currency for people to transact. And we are essentially a native infrastructure to support those. And we just start to see probably at the very beginning of a native multi-chain ecosystem kind of start to build out. And then there's also a world out there connected with bridges that are also will be connected with Acala through the wormhole bridge as well. So then you can see the spider web kind of like start to grow in space and really getting closer and closer to the vision that we see back in the days. So yeah, very exciting.
That's really interesting. As you say, we've been hearing things about the cross-chain realities. It's very close to us. And I was also reading about that Acala has announced a $250 million fund for the ecosystem. So how are you going to kind of utilize that in today's world? It's great that there's a lot of work behind building these chains, whether it's like on the layer ones, whether it's whether it's the roll-ups and so on and so forth. That these chains are going to be talking to each other based on some are of the EVM platform, some are not. So how are you going to use this fund? And the biggest challenge is that we face today to real world applications is the customer experience bit, right? The onboarding of it. So what are your thoughts to that in terms of, the trends? Do you see improvement? What are the challenges? What do you think that needs to be done? What's missing?
Yeah, so I think for us, like on the multi-chain world, is probably like a 3 stages process for us to kind of like bootstrap. And the first stage is, Acala is a blockchain, right? So we kind of bootstrap on our own blockchain with this stable coin. And then the cool thing about the stack that we build is on the chain that we have, there's not only just stable coin, but also there's EVM. So that there's an Ethereum virtual machine. We call it EVM Plus because it has a deep integration into the Polkadot ecosystem and can use some of the advanced liquidation, Oracle, and other cool sort of on-chain features that provided by the platform. And with that, then we can build a AUSD local ecosystem, if you like. And then beyond that, because we are also in this connected multi-chain world provided by Polkadot and Kusama, there's going to be like 200 or so chains connected in that world. And then we can actually scale through that processes, sending our AUSD onto those also parachain like blockchains, as well as the applications built on top of those blockchains as growing the economy in the crypto world. And then at the same time, as that grows, we are also having partners outside of this, this world outside of Polkadot, and that is like other ecosystems, other blockchains. Because for us, we are more or less an exporter of this liquidity, and then other layer ones like Solana, and a number of like Cosmos chains and Avalanches, and they're all more importers of TBR. That's what they mostly care about, and that's how we kind of like connect to each other. But more so, we are more like the gateway, if you like, by holding on to AUSD or getting access to it. It's more like the crypto users can access all the protocols within the multi-chain world provided by Polkadot and Kusama. And having said that, then the next stage is the hi-fi partner. So what I call hi-fi is hybrid finance. So hybriding decentralized finance and centralized finance partners. So these are folks like fintech partners like current.com and a few others that we are working with as well. So essentially, AUSD is an on-ramp and off-ramp sort of interface for them, but more importantly, they don't care what you call yourself as a stablecoin. They care more about what's behind the stablecoin, is the product and services and DeFi, which is like new opportunities that their consumers can actually access. And then we're actually doing a product level integration with them right now. And then probably the success factor is like their users are able to access those opportunities without even knowing they are using AUSD. They are even connecting to Acala. They're even connecting to Polkadot at all. They don't know any of those, but they are enjoying the benefit of that. So that's probably where we are heading, I think. It's not that far away, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, that's the important thing, right? So when you're utilizing these platforms, you as a customer, they don't care what's underneath the technology. It has to be so seamless that basically they can transact. And what you said about the convergence between TradFi and DeFi, that's coming. That's already happening in a big way. So I'd like to bring Arif here into this discussion. So Arif, what are some of your priorities? What are the projects that you're working on? I mean, really keen to understand more about the INFTs. I was playing around with it yesterday, trying to form an avatar of myself in your ecosystem. Truly fascinating. I hadn't heard of it before this. So, it's like, yes, I was on OpenSea looking at transactions and stuff like that. So tell us more about, what's happening, what is the future, where do you see real world applications of INFTs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we started almost 3 years ago, the thesis was synthetic AI generated content is going to be this digital abundance machine. That means you're going to have so much AI generated content, whether it's text, whether it's video, whether it's voice, all of this will look and sound like it is created by humans, right? So there's a company called OpenAI that has a model called GPT-3 that can churn out text. Anjali, for example, if you've written a blog post or if you've written Twitter feeds, if you've written Twitter posts, it takes your Twitter post, put it in, it'll make you sound, the output would sound just like you, right? With very little data. These machine learning, the machine learning revolution that's happening somewhat tangentially to the blockchain revolution is really where Alethea sort of sits between these two worlds, right? And for us, when we started looking at synthetic AI-generated content, it really looks like an abundance machine that just creates endless amounts of chaos, right? If you're not careful about it. Where the blockchain comes in, and this is where it starts to get interesting, is blockchain is really a scarcity or trust engines, right? So you have to have provenance, each piece of content has to have that authenticity. So we started looking at the thesis of how we can combine these two technologies just to see what interesting experiments would emerge. And one of the things that we started getting really interested and passionate about was the creation of new IP through NFTs, right? Whether it's a Bored Ape, whether it's a cool cat. We launched what is called the first INFT with an auction house, Sotheby's. This first INFT was called Alice. Alice is basically a character. She's an ERC721. She's on the Ethereum blockchain, but she also has embedded in her a personality prompt that allows her to have a level of intelligence. So at the smart contract level, there is some amount of code that embeds intelligence, right? So this is where it starts to get interesting. When you try and combine these two technologies, you now have Alice who can now interact with you, talk with you, engage with you. And Alice is quite interesting because she's trained on the stories of Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, but we also trained her data set on the Satoshi, on the Bitcoin white paper written by Satoshi Nakamoto. What that does is that on the AI side, it creates this new character. So for example, we asked Alice once, where are you based? Now, a normal Alice based on Alice in Wonderland would say, hey, I'm in the rabbit hole. But because she was also trained on the Satoshi white paper, she replied that she was in the decentralized crypto rabbit hole. Now that is a new coinage that the AI created. Like, who owns the IP for that? That's like an open question today. But for us at Alethea, we've been really interested about the intersection of these two exponential technologies. So the INFT standard is something new that we pioneered almost a year and a half ago when I first wrote about it. And since then, we've been able to launch what is called the 100 Revenants collection, which are 100 INFTs, all available today. And the collection was one of the most successful collections that OpenSea launched together with us. And people could essentially purchase the intelligence of characters from our history. So if you go to alethea.ai, you'll see a platform called Noah's Ark, where you have these characters. You have the cool cats, you have the penguins, but you also have these revenants who are characters from our history. You have, for example, at the start of Noah's Ark, you have a character called Mumtaz Mahal, who the Taj Mahal was built after. But then you also have a character like Shakespeare, that's an INFT, and you can actually interact with Shakespeare because that Shakespeare's INFT is trained on the intelligence and the works of Shakespeare, Hamlet, all of the works that he's written. This INFT is able to interact and talk from that perspective and from that personality. So creating these distinct personas and personalities, embedding that intelligence into the NFT is for us a new standard, the INFT, right? And where it starts to get interesting is it's going beyond chatbots. We believe these NFTs, they're not just going to be static images anymore as people start to think about it. And this is one of the things we're focused on from a priority standpoint. We're seeing tremendous inbound demand from communities that have built great projects or great communities, but not everyone can build their own metaverse. Like, that is a huge infrastructure play. For us at Alethea, we are basically the AI connective tissue, that AI infrastructure layer that adds nicely onto your NFTs. It gives them superpowers and allows people to personalize them, create new personas and characters, and also train them to do specific jobs. So some INFTs are able to be great transcribers. some can do great copywriting, some you can talk with as companions. So all of these use cases, and one day we believe that the INFTs that can trade crypto for you, that can buy AUSD and arbitrage it with USDT, and like, I don't know, find unique opportunities.
It can probably take out loans for itself to actually buy other NFTs as collection, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this sort of like, once you start adding like the AI machine learning revolution into the mix, you introduce not just a complexifier, but a very large design space for people to play with and really bring their imaginations to life. And so that's really what we're focused on right now, Anjali.
Great, thank you for that. That's fascinating. You know, as you were talking, I was curious to see if whether Alice, you know, when you talked about Alice, I thought about Alice is the Sophia of the metaverse. So, you know, there is a Sophia robot who's completely trained on AI, and that itself is like, she's been built by one of the companies here in Hong Kong. You know, as you were talking about this, I was curious to understand, when you're building these NFTs right now, they are the ERC 721 standard based on Ethereum. What are your views on, you know, basically cross-linking? What is the application of, can you take this NFTs to a different platform, or the cross chains, or where can they go to be built on Solana? Are you thinking about that as the future? Because just a few weeks ago, there was this project called Ghostly Ghosts launched. It was an NFT project, which is meant to be multi-chain, so to speak. I mean, I'm personally not a holder of it, so I don't know how technically it can work, but because you're building this through an AI perspective, which, you know, these NFTs will be capable of doing more higher order services, right? I mean, that's the whole vision behind Alethea. So can you talk a little bit about whether you see these being cross-chain, and also what can I do as a holder of them, like personally?
No, absolutely. I think one thing that we've, like, similar to Bette's thesis around a multi-chain world, we believe multi-chain world will exist, actually has come into existence, and projects have started to think a lot about being chain agnostic, right? Like having that as a primary design premise before you build your project. We're also pushing it a little bit further. We think there will be metaverse agnosticism. That means you're not going to build for your specific mini metaverse. You're going to try and build for a connected metaverse that intersects all of the different collections. For us at Alethea, like, we really vision, we really feel that we would be that connective tissue between these different metaverses, because we're using AI to connect and bring these characters to life. And we've been thinking a lot about it. So if you go to Noah's Ark today, you'll see assets from the Solana ecosystem. I think we have what is called a degen ape. We have assets from the Binance ecosystem. We will have more assets, more NFT assets that we will bring to life on this ecosystem. I will just qualify one thing and say that the AI component today that is primarily driving, so there are about 5 AI engines that are needed to make, I know, as humans, we take for granted that we can speak easily, we can talk, our lips can move, voice comes out. All of these things on the AI side, we need almost 5 AI engines to create comprehension of the question, but also language output that is reasonable and sensible. So these 5 AI engines today, they sit off-chain. They have to sit off-chain. But in the longer run, I think there are opportunities for us to create more decentralized infrastructure once decentralized computational providers actually come to market that can service better than Amazon or better than Google, right? So one of the things about Web3 infrastructure is a large part of it today is still built on centralized stacks, except the core, sort of the core primary on-chain related data. So for us, I think the thesis that we want to see play out, or at least what we are pushing forward, is NFTs, do more with NFTs. That means they're not just going to be static images. You're not just going to be able to trade with them, but they would essentially be able to go out and earn rewards for you and perform services for you and perform functions for you. And so this intelligence layer, once you start adding it, it really is for us a design unlock or superpower upgrade for the NFT. And when you own an INFT, essentially the owners of the Revenant and our community that owns what are called pods, where they are, what they're doing is they're going to be fusing these pods to the 10 collections we presently support. And once those pods are fused, people would be able to then take these NFTs and essentially earn in the Noah's Ark metaverse and get rewarded in our native token for the participation, for their training of our AI engine, for creating synthetic data sets that help us. So all of these things would make our AI engine smarter. It's very similar to like how you think Tesla is a car company. But actually, Tesla really is a data company, because all of the data that the cars are taking in are allowing the AI engine to effectively map the terrain and also create smarter driving and smarter capabilities. So from our standpoint, the more these INFTs interact, talk, engage with each other, do jobs and services, the underlying AI infrastructure starts to level up progressively over time, and the network becomes smarter.
Yeah, definitely. Just speaking of Tesla, and I would like to segue into this whole opportunity behind NFT-backed loans or lending in general. There was big news out there in the Web3 world, in the crypto world, about Tesla, which took a 7.8 million back loan from MakerDAO for a real estate deal. Now, who would imagine that that could happen? Of course, Tesla benefits from the fact that they don't show this as a debt on their balance sheets. But this is like the real world case of how crypto meets or sort of TradFi or Web 2 meets the Web 3 world. So what are your views on that? Bette, do you want to kind of add a perspective on your thoughts behind what's happening there in the lending world? What's the opportunity?
Yeah, so I think it's at least from our point of view, it's always heading that direction, because when you have an NFT, I think people see mostly the apes as a gift, right? And then that's the end of it. But that's really just the beginning of scratching the surface, because the NFT is really linking the value and then making a token in a tokenized form, and then you can transact. And then that value can be on-chain and off-chain, because right now there are real-world assets that can be tokenized, and that could range from accounts receivable, invoices, that can also be real estates, and that could be also carbon credit, that a project that we're working with, trying to tokenize those sort of assets on-chain, and then be able to draw liquidity, right? Drawing liquidity is through you can do that with a banking system like Acala, also like Maker, using those NFTs as collaterals and then drawing liquidity out of it. And that's actually physical, like real world asset. But I think what Arif alluded to there is like digital on-chain assets, right? And then that can also be tokenized as NFT, and then both of them actually is a way to capture non-fungible values, right? And then through the platform today, we're only at the very beginning. I think the loans that issued from NFT is just very, very tiny compared to loans financed from the crypto assets. And you can tell why, because the majority of the crypto assets are on-chain. It's relatively easy, even with cross-chain technology, to actually be able to bridge them across and then collateralize them and issue credit out of it. Whereas for real-world assets and also for digital NFT assets, both of them, the hardest part is risk management, and there's certain part of real world assets that you could use different mechanisms. So we're working with folks like Centrifuge, and they do this good job of making it in a senior tranche, junior tranche, and then ways to actually manage the risk, and then pass bit of that to the on-chain vaults, like the collateralization mechanism, and then draw liquidity out of. So you have cushions on different level to manage those risks. Whereas on the digital side, right, the digital NFT assets, the hardest part is Oracle feed. I think that is probably one of the hardest problem to solve, is how do you price out of these apes? And well, of course, if you are AI, how do you price that? What if you've gained this new knowledge after one day playing in a metaverse and gain 10 different skills, and then you're now working 200 different jobs over 24 hours time, and how do you price that, right? So, but I think that those are very interesting, intriguing problems to solve, and this is also why we chose the tech stack that we built on. So we chose the substrate using a chain approach, app-specific chain approach, is exactly that for two reasons. One is we are able to move a lot of the off-chain work on-chain. So we have this off-chain worker ability that we can do on-chain liquidation. Like this is not possible if you are just building smart contracts. Like today, all the liquidation, so they call keepers, right? So people watching the risk position on-chain, and they are triggering the liquidation. And all of those triggers is happen running by individuals or even just companies with the off-chain server. And then they're sending transactions on chain. If there's any congestions, you couldn't get those through. So this is today's world, right? But we are where we are. We've already made a lot of progress, but we now have a tech stack. Right now, what Acala is running on is on-chain liquidation. So every block, you can monitor your risk position on the blockchain using this off-chain worker technology. So you have the ability to process stuff not part of the consensus, so you can gain efficiency, but at the same time, you have the integrity is maintained throughout the blockchain network nodes by processing inside the nodes. So that's one thing there. And then another side of that is upgradability. Because I think it's naive if you're building a real world application, think you can write the contract on day one and then it will last forever without any change at all, right? I think that's naive. So I come from a software engineering background, so that doesn't happen in the software world. You never bug free. You always encounter real world problems as you progress. So having the ability to upgrade without forks, and then have ability to govern that with on-chain and off-chain collaborative approach is very important. If you actually want to scale it and then incorporate real world examples. And that's what the ability that we have today on Acala is we've experienced already 20 plus on-chain upgrades without forks on Polkadot. And then on Acala, also a number of them as well. And this ranges from trivial updates, like just change the rates and parameters, and also serious changes at the chain level, doing technical upgrades as well. No forks happen. So I think those two things is actually, we don't know all the answers today. And then we also don't know all the questions, right? And that's like, if you build on a very fixed structure, you're not going to leave room for yourself to grow. But with those two ability, like forkless upgradability, but also being able to process off-chain process on-chain efficiently, is going to give us enough room to actually solve these real-world problems there. So yeah.
So that's sort of interesting because when we speak of the blockchain, we're talking about immutability, right? So once some records are in there, once a smart contract's written, you can't ever change it. It's there, and then you build on top of that through more more contracts, right? That you write on chain. So is that a key distinguishing factor or feature, you would say, of the Acala blockchain and the ecosystem?
I think blockchain is never meant to be immutable forever or in any measurable way, right? I think it's immutable by consensus. Like I think people just took out the clause and then just say it's immutable and that's it. But every blockchain has level of immutability, and then the really high end, like really decentralized ones, it's immutable by consensus. If you actually be able to have enough consensus, even for Bitcoin, let's say, if you can get the miners to have consensus and agree, you can go any direction and revert any transactions without problem, right?
That's true.
And the problem with that is like it's very hard to form any consensus at all, and that's why people avoid that topic of you can actually change stuff. But the only thing that doesn't change in this world, to be honest, is change itself, isn't it? So why are we avoiding that? And then for what we are building here is we have a way to have rich on-chain consensus and enforce execution of those decisions. You can see if you don't have a mechanism like that, then you can argue off-chain on the forums and then have fights and healthy and unhealthy debates. But you then come up with a conclusion decision. But if the dev who making those PRs into the GitHub repo doesn't agree with you, let's say, and then your change will never be executed, right? And then is that the system that we actually want? Even our government works slightly better than that, isn't it? Today's Western democratic government is slightly better than that. There's still legislators, and then if there's enough vote, the legislation pass and it's executable, right? So for what we are building on Web3, we got to be, can't be worse than that, right? So I think on and off chain governance is highly required. So
we're almost going to be on time. We have 2 minutes left, but I do want to do my rapid fire. My rapid fire questions are very simple. I want you both to talk about your favorite NFT project. I'm going to start with Arif. Tell us why, and why is it your favorite project?
Yeah, this is a trick question because we have our own NFT project and I have to talk about it, right? So, I mean, foundationally, I mean, I love what the Bored Apes have done with their open IP approach. We look at that as a model because they've innovated, they provided innovation. We took a lot of the learnings from there and launched our first collection called the Revenants, which is 100 INFTs that can interact and talk with you and have intelligence. And soon we'll be able to create art and generate assets and create new forms of NFTs themselves. So those are sort of the two collections. I don't know whether I passed the question, but those are the two favorite collections we have.
That's fair enough. Bette, do you have your favorites? NFT and NFT collection?
Yeah, I always like the classic, the crypto kitty is one of my favorite, mostly because, from 0 to 1 is usually the hardest. Once you come up with the idea, you can see variations of it very easily. And then another 0 to 1 I can see is a Bankman like Chive. So these are the, V2 people that brought Bill Murray. If you know Bill Murray, and they are bringing his IP into the crypto world and offering NFTs. I think that's also a landmark job that they've done there to actually be able to incorporate this, merging these two worlds and really bring real people into metaverse and also the NFT world. Yeah. Well, imagine that has powered by AI. That would be very cool there.
Amazing. Exactly. I can't wait to have the same discussion next year. I mean, it's 1 year is like 10 years or 20 years in crypto. I mean, things move so fast. I'm sure you guys will have more to add and so many new things to say and new projects, new favorite NFT projects next year. So I'd like to wrap it up here. Both Arif and Bette, thanks so much for your time. And let's be in touch, if not in the metaverse, in the US or when I visit New Zealand. So take care now, and thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bette. See you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.